than that is sort of limited, but I have it open on my thing, so you can say that same thing and I can check.
Okay, perfect. I have it open on my thing as well then, and between the two of us,
Yeah,
I'm
the
also
powers combined.
yeah, I'm also really bad at like keeping tunes and names straight and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
maybe Jeremy plus James equals like 1/3 of an Andrew O'Sullivan in terms of ability to recall tune names and find concordances and stuff.
It's like, it's such a joy. Like every session needs that person.
Yes, absolutely. needs
Shut
that
up,
person.
album. Yeah, like I love the guy who ran the session, and it just, if we're going to use this audio, it's going to be super awkward where I just randomly yelled at my phone to shut up, but it's going to sound like I just yelled at you to shut up.
Oh yeah, sorry, Jeremy. Go ahead, sir.
But yeah, the session in Iowa City that I went to for a while before COVID, like there's this old dude, Dennis, who like ran it, but yeah, just every tune he knew the title of, and like 6 other tunes and stories, which is sort of a, like, I get a little confused sometimes about some tunes of like, wait, did I read that on Traditional Tune Archive, or is that something that Dennis said?
Oh yeah, he's one of your sources now.
Yeah.
What do you think of this idea? I've come across people like that myself,
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those people. I love music, I really love it, but I have a hard time hanging on to that stuff. And I've wondered before if it's tied to my inability to understand or retain lyrics as well. But I also have friends who are like just so good, like they can hear a song once or twice and they know all the lyrics and they won't hear it again for 12 years and they can sing along to it when it comes on.
Yeah.
And I heard somebody theorizing once. Yeah,
oh, go ahead.
That's what I've heard. That's exactly it.
Oh.
I've heard this idea, like there might be some kind of genetic thing for, like oral storytelling. Like we did it for a long time as a species, like maybe some people have got that.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to contradict that.
Yeah,
myself,
go ahead.
guess,
You might make me feel better.
But it's also like, so I don't know, like there's a level, the way that oral tradition was first explained to me, as in terms of it being executed or like seeing the manifestation of it later, is that still where like somebody isn't literate, or somebody is literate, somebody does read and write, but they come from a culture that was like oral, like that was the most important way of communicating stuff within like a generation. So they might have been like the first or second generation person in their family to read and write, maybe first generation. But still they retained all this cultural knowledge and like all of this stuff that like, there's kind of no reason for them to know that other than just, how do you remember that stuff?
Yeah.
But it was the woman who like worked as the post service administrator or whatever at Leech Lake Reservation in Cass Lake, which is this kind of city. But my American Indian Studies professor was like, oh yeah, she knew everybody's name, address, what clan they were from, which chief they were descended from, like just like knew all this information about it, but like just this kind of Rolodex of biography of everyone.
Yeah.
But there's I'm just going to start talking, I guess, but there's a source that I really use a lot for doing like 18th century indigenous history, specifically like Ojibwe stuff. By this guy named John Tanner, who was kidnapped when he was like 15, kidnapped when he was like 9 from Kentucky. But he lived his childhood and life like as an Anishinaabe person, like as an Ojibwe and Ottawa person. And people like crap on his account because they're like, how could somebody possibly remember that? And it's like, well, he's from an oral tradition, and the things that he's remembering that people get really like, ugh, how could they remember that? Like he lists how many muskrats he killed in one winter and how many moose and how many bear and all these like really specific details. We're like, well, obviously he's making that up. Like, well, if he's from an oral tradition and he's a man who's a hunter and that's like the most important part of his identity, like,
right,
yeah, I think he'd remember those things.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, so.
No, that makes sense.
So I don't know why people can know tune names, but they're the devil is the answer. They're the devil and we need them. Every group needs one at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Preferably 2 so they can argue and you can be
and
the
you can just
benefactor
watch
of that argument.
Yeah. Yeah, it's never been me. I get real excited anytime I do, like when my daughter's doing her Irish dance competitions now, I might recognize 1 or 2 of like, and I'm talking like, I'll recognize the Kesh jig. You know what I mean? Like the most obvious stuff in the world.
The important one. Yeah.
Babe, I know this one. That's about the level I'm working with right now. So with that like preamble, don't feel bad if if at some point you don't remember the tune that you recorded yourself.
Yeah.
Especially because of quantity. That's one thing, Jeremy. I was looking at this and just thinking like, man, you didn't short us on this album, Roly Poly. Like, there's 18 tracks.
Yeah.
Do you know how many tunes there are in it though?
I used to.
Yeah.
But a lot. There's a lot.
Ton.
Especially like every Highland pipe set, there's like 5 or 6 tunes. I think there's one track that only has 1 tune on it.
Is that the Black and the Gray?
Yeah, Black and the Gray. Oh, sorry. There's 3 tracks. I lied. There's 3 tracks, only 1 tune. Morning Post, Adieu, Adieu, Our Faithless World, which I guess that shouldn't count. And then, Black and the Gray.
Well, those are some of my favorite tracks on there too, though. And I guess, let's dive into one of them. Let's pick one.
Yeah.
To get some music at the front end of this thing. Actually, I did think it might be kind of funny if we open the episode with the back half of your first track. Wait, is it Jackson's Roly Poly that you used as an intro for was it season 6 of the podcast? Would it not be funny if we opened with that? So it's like really confuse a few people who listen to both shows. Be like, wait a second,
is this a repo? Yeah, that makes total sense.
That would be funny, right? So maybe coming out of that, it makes sense to say something about that track first.
And you're only going to play the second chunk of it, though, right?
I mean, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, because
I think that works. But there's a story I have to tell about the first tune, which is sort of funny.
Wait, is the first tune? The first tune's not the one that Ian wrote, is it?
Yeah.
Tell me the story. Then go ahead. Yeah. Tell me that story. Yeah.
Well, so
did I just spoil it? I'll edit that out if I did.
Oh no, it's fine. It's funny. I don't know. What question were you going to ask? I guess about the track, and maybe we can make that.
Hang on. Let me check my notes. Let me check my notes here. My notes. I was going to say, tell me about that tune.
Jackson's Roly Poly. So yeah, every album at this point, except for Pay the Pipe Maker, is the title track of whatever what I used for that season. And Jackson's Roly Poly, I found it in O'Farrell's manuscript, and I felt like Roly Poly was a pudding I had read about in the Patrick O'Brien series of novels, which are about like Napoleonic War stuff. But there's a lot of food in it. It's what Master and Commander is based on. And maybe I didn't read it in that, but I definitely had like heard the name Roly Poly as a boiled pudding before. And so I was really into, still I'm, I guess in theory, having, once I realized what I was going to be doing of like, I'm going to be naming all of these albums that come out after the title track. I want it to be food related, and that was going to be the like photo art and all that stuff. It's just so much work to like think of a good like cover art for a thing. And I was like, if I can use this to justify cooking a food and making a recipe or something like that, I'll do that too. But yeah, Jackson's Roly Poly, it's a really cool tune. It shows up in O'Farrell's tutor, which is like the 1800 tutor for the National Instrument of Ireland or something. I can't remember quite what it's called. But I was playing that tune and really liking it. I think it works good as an opener. And around the time that I was playing that tune, this other tune like kind of crept into my fingers, and I didn't know where it was from. And I kept playing it, and it kept changing a little bit, but not much. And then I started playing it on harp, and then like maybe half a year before Roly Poly came out, I started posting me playing that tune, saying, "Hey, what is this tune?"
Yeah,
because I was like, "Oh my god, did I just write the best tune
right
ever? I just wrote the best tune ever."
So like really cautiously putting it out in the world to be does anybody know this tune?
Anybody know this? And I posted it and I didn't realize how many times I did it, but I did this like every month or two. That tune would show up again. I'd be like, I gotta know what this is, because I started to realize this works really well as a set with Jackson's Roly Poly. And I played through like I thought I played through like half a dozen different versions of Roly Poly, and I was like, I must have found it when I was doing that.
Mm.
And it was around the time that Robin was, I guess it wasn't around the time he was born. It was just, it was around the time he was 1, right? So the previous album we talked about, Bannock's a Barley Meal, I released like a week before Robin was born. So this album came out a year later. And so that tune that I thought I invented, I was like, I guess I wrote a song for my son. How amazing. So we'll call it Robin's Roly Poly into Jackson's Roly Poly. This is just going to be incredible. And then, I got this album. I got a review of Roly Poly, which I think you were almost going to do it. I think you were. It was like, pick somebody who's going to review your album, and I picked two people that don't know me very well, who would be, I thought, a little bit more fair, because you like me too much. So I was like,
definitely would have been gushing. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really thankful. I got Ian Gelston, who's just an amazing border piper, and Paul Martin, who's an amazing just piper, like all around piper. He plays just maybe a dozen types of bagpipes really well, and hurdy-gurdy and fiddle and stuff like that. You can see him on social media as Dunholm Piper, I think. But anyway, Ian, he was reviewing it, like, so he saw the album and listened to it like on day 1 kind of thing. And he said, Jeremy, listening to your album to write the review, really liking it. You should know, though, that your first tune, Robin's Roly Poly, is actually my tune. It's like, oh no, St. Mary's Hornpipe. And like, and it's like, oh dang it, like, where were you when I was posting constantly? What is this tune?
What laughing jokester god, master of fate, lined up those stars to make make that happen?
But I fixed it. Like, thankfully, it was published on. I hadn't quite got the physical version of it done yet, so it was just on Bandcamp, so I could go through and edit it out and like attribute it to Ian. But
see, I in my head, when I think through your albums, I still think Robin's Roly Poly as like the title for this one. And
that's because you were one of like 5 people, so like 10 people bought it when it still said Robin's Roly Poly.
Okay. So I was like, where's the power of suggestion? Like, why do I feel like I remember this being Robin's Roly Poly? I do. That was a real thing then. Okay.
Yeah. If you downloaded it, I would assume if you downloaded it on day 1, it'll still say Robin's Roly Poly. But if you stream it on Bandcamp or buy it after day 1, it says St. Helens Hornpipe.
Yeah.
Or St. Mary's Hornpipe.
St. Mary's, yeah.
And I was I felt vindicated because I couldn't remember where I learned the tune. And when I looked through Ian's like awesome book, it says, here's this tune, St. Mary's Hornpipe. I have no idea what I wrote it about.
Oh.
Like, so he, as much as he recognized it as his own tune, he doesn't remember the story for it either. So like, well, isn't it better? Like, it'll be Robin's Roly Poly then.
There
like,
you
it's
go.
a better title, because I wrote it. I was thinking of Robin, like when he was a baby still, he really got a kick out of being rolled back and forth along the bed. And it was sort of the first way I could make him laugh uncontrollably was to roll him pretty aggressively. But
it's so adorable. So then maybe it's like there's some cosmic like alternative timeline in which a self that Ian is still connected to somehow did write that tune for Robin.
Oh yeah,
it is Robin's Roly Poly.
Yeah. That's almost certainly what it was. The what was it? Oh, Ian posted a video like, I don't know, I guess a year ago, probably now. But I showed Robin it. It was the first time I saw Ian speak. Like, mostly I just watch his piping videos. I've never seen him, but it was like some National Piping Day kind of thing. And Ian has just enough salt and pepper in his beard now that Robin was like, Papa? He thought it was
really?
he was like, is that my grandfather who plays bagpipes and has been quiet about it this whole time?
I imagine the, Robin's, child mind, there's a cast of, maybe 6 people in the entire universe, and so like, that one must be Grandpa. And also there's bagpipes in his world. And so it's like, that's
well, I feel bad. His, I finally put a track of his other grandfather playing some music on the podcast, Jim Sanders. And Jim has this like great, well, he doesn't, but the person who uploaded those videos, and I've made this playlist of all of these, like essentially an album that he recorded and posted on YouTube. But often it is Jim playing guitar and his buddy Bob White, who's known as Quail, who's like a big deal, like bluegrass, old time bass player down here in the Triangle back in the, I don't know, 70s. But Anyway, Quail has got like white hair, but he's always like sitting there next to Jim, and so like Robin is. It took a long time for Robin to realize that wasn't his grandma. Like he was like,
"Oh, I see."
And Nana? It was like, no, Nana doesn't have a beard and isn't bald.
Right.
But that association thing.
Kids, am I right? Speaking of which, you managed the bedtime struggle. It's nice of you to be willing to do this because you're not at home, right? You're doing your travel thing right now.
Yeah, we're down in North Carolina with the in-laws for a couple more days. We head back on Friday, so
which
I guess
important question: which instruments did you manage to take with you this time?
It's been a really quiet visit. I only took 2 bagpipes, and I haven't played one of them. Like I've played my small pipes, my quiet pipe or small pipes a couple times, and I brought my Northumbrian pipes too, and I haven't taken those out of the case. But the real bagpipe thing that's been happening is, I don't think John Charles will mind if I blow up a spot that he started a Minecraft server. So I've been spending every moment knowing that there were like a handful of babysitters just obsessively playing Minecraft for the first time in years.
Yeah.
So all of the bagpipe time and a lot of the work prep time has been gone to trying to find a dang nether fortress.
To building a new world.
Yeah. We've been frustrated that you're not on there because the server that he set up has some weird default setting that every time you swear, it just hashtags it. Like it just blurs it out. And we're like, oh man, James would be having a blast on here.
It was already set up just for me.
Yeah.
But then also, how many whistles and jaw harps do you have stored on your person in various pockets and like in your socks, I'm assuming, and stuff like that?
Yeah. God, I haven't played. I don't think I brought some whistles, but I haven't played it. It's really been I had all these plans to like, I have to work on a new season of the Ojibwe language podcast, which features some whistle and jaw harp for like knowing when parts of the episode are changing.
Oh, sure.
So I've got all that stuff to do,
but
I haven't. Yeah, but the other woe that I've been rocking is still this work laptop, which just sort of works, but also doesn't in really creative and broken ways. So, but it didn't take much to dissuade me from working too hard if I could be playing Minecraft, which does work on it just fine. So
yeah, well, that seems like a cruel twist of fate.
Yeah.
Well, that's the best I can do to a transition to another track. Let's see. I do want to hear the Morning Post, which is that is a whistle track if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, I think so.
Was it just one whistle, or was there some harmony going on in that one?
Let me just listen for a quick second. Let's just check it out.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, it's 2 whistles, and it's like, it's just out of tune enough, you know, like there's sort of this lovely bit of dissonance or chaos when that comes in. I'm trying to think of what it is. I think it's an F. I think it's an F whistle.
Oh, like the tiny little whistles? Really high F whistle?
Yeah.
The one that we all accidentally bought thinking it was a low F whistle?
Maybe. No, I bought an F whistle on purpose because somebody had this weird... there was this, this rumor going around. But there was the whole thing, like you can play, like Gravel Walk is a really cool tune on Highland pipes. And it's a really cool Irish tune at sessions, but it's freaking murder to play on a whistle or on uilleann pipes. Like just the things that tune does well don't fit well on the scale, But if you have an F whistle, you can play Gravel Walk in a session and it's like more comfortable for the fingers based on where the placement goes. I think is why I bought an F whistle. I might be getting confused with a G whistle, but I really liked those F. Yeah, it's the F whistle, but it's like, it's still, you can kind of get your fingers on it and play it. But it also fits really well in your pocket.
Yeah.
which is nice.
That's my daughter started learning on an F whistle, one of those little ones, because I had one because I had purchased it thinking it was an octave lower than it is. But it's pretty well balanced, plays pretty well still and all that.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a straight and Skillern tune as well. Yeah. It's sort of funny. This Roly Poly feels like a transition album kind of. I mean, whatever, they all are, I guess, but like Straight and Skillern was just my total favorite collection of country dance music, and it features a lot on Pay the Pipe Maker and a fair amount on Bannocks of Barley Meal. But most of the tunes on Bannock or on Roly Poly are this new country dance collection, which is not country dance tunes, but it's circus tunes, which it's just such a cool collection of music.
That was the celebrated circus tunes of the season, right?
Yeah, Watlin's celebrated circus tunes.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about Watlin is there's like a ton of women on it. Like there's a lot of female composers, which is, unusual for like printed 18th century sources. Do we have a Watlin track on this album? I think we do.
I've got one marked. And so if I scroll a minute, I can find it. If you find it first, let me know. But I know that I highlighted one of them.
It's a race. Yeah, Milliner's House and Siege of Belgrade, maybe? That's a Watlin set.
Stuck in my head a lot. That's a really good track. It's like whistles over a drone. It's kind of funky.
Yeah. Realizing, it's so weird. Realizing what drones went well with what whistles was a fun thing to think about. I think it's got to be that one. I guess there isn't that many Watlin.
Was that Eliza Ross, or am I thinking of something completely
Eliza
different?
Ross is her own collection, so she doesn't show up in Watlin. She just has a collection. Oh, there's another set. There's Lady Eliza Callender's favorite, Miss Wardlaw's Reel, Highland Fair. Fair is such a good tune. And Miss Anne Bain's Fancy. Those are all from Watlin's celebrated circus tunes as well.
Well, then let's. I'll have played a little bit of that whistle and the Milliner's House.
Yeah.
And then we can go to. Sorry, what was the one you just mentioned?
Lady Eliza Callender's favorite.
I mean, we might end up playing every track on the album.
Yeah, we got nothing but time, right?
That's right. Remember if any of these sets were put together based on titles going together nicely, or when that happens, is that just totally a coincidence?
It's not. Sometimes it happens very intentionally. Oftentimes it's a coincidence.
Because on that one, definitely Lady Eliza Callender's favorite and Miss Anne Bain's Fancy they feel kind of similar. And then you might say that Miss Wardlaw's reel also fits kind of a, I don't know, a template there, but
yeah, no, mostly like so many of these sets are based on what tunes sound well together, or like use their same instrument, are the same, or like develop in a way that I like. Like when I'm, I've got something like, I'll have 100 tracks or 100 tunes or more that I want to put on the album. And like my process for making these albums is to go back and look at the tune book. Like once I started doing the tune books, it was so much easier. Kind of go back and look at tunes, be like, oh yeah, that one was really good. And then kind of make a master tune book of like, okay, I got to make sets out of all these tunes, or I want to play all these, and kind of figure out what goes well together. And often just wind up like some tunes don't fit too well, but the title might work well. I don't really see any on here where the titles were the thing that put them together, other than women's set. So like track 10, which is all highland piping, most of those tunes have something to do with women. So in my head it was like, oh, this is the women's set, so if there's titles about women,
maybe we could listen to that one, because I do like that track a lot too, and we won't have heard highland piping up until now in the episode, so that could be fun.
Oh, absurd. Well, we've only been talking 30 minutes. I mean,
we're barely getting warmed up anyway. That you were shredding in this one too, though. I don't know if you remember it super clearly, but there are some parts where like really the riffs you're playing, I think would fit pretty well on an electric guitar. Like this is some pretty serious I thought the sound was great too. There's almost something metallic about the sound of the pipes coming through on this track.
Yeah, it was. I recorded in my garage, which I think maybe helped. Like, got that natural echo.
Yeah,
and it's also that 1969 Hardy chanter. That's just like, it's just the most beautiful chanter I've ever played. And I don't know. I'm slowly falling pretty deeply in love with this, like, maybe 180-year-old chanter I have, but it's still, when I switch back to that Hardy chanter, it's like, oh yeah, that's that sound. That's what I'm looking for. It's like that nice mix of sounding old, but also really crisp and good, I guess.
Yeah. It strikes me as like the way that this track comes through, and I've listened to it in the car on headphones and otherwise, and it's consistent across the board that it feels like it's got that kind of sharp cut through kind of quality without going so far as to become painful. Like, it really sits at the sweet spot where it's driving without being painful.
Yeah.
You mentioned though, like I think this whole album was just the one Zoom mic.
Yeah.
And just into Audacity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bare bones setup. That's pretty cool. Like you got a lot
Yeah.
of stuff in here. You got between whistles and a harp and lots of different kinds of bagpipes. So like this set was in a garage. Did you like how many physical locations do you remember? Like were you all over the place when it was time for whistle track? Were you like, oh, I better go to the carpeted room, you know?
No, no. It was just this one. Like just the Highland pipe tunes are all recorded in that garage.
Mm.
And everything else was recorded in my, crappy basement recording space. Which is maybe the worst. I don't know. It was really hard to go from like Oyster Wives Rant, Bannock's the Barley Mail, Pay the Pipe Maker, like those first three albums are all recorded in a upstairs room,
Hmm.
which just has like it's a little bit more satisfying thud, to like the acoustics are a little bit better.
Oh,
It's a little bit happier
sure.
to like tap your foot.
Yes.
And I keep meaning to like do something to improve that in recording in the basement, but I just don't. Who's got time for that? And instead, I have just bought a different microphone so I can record the drone separately and all that. And I'm still pretty happy with it. But there's part of me that's thinking about going back to the garage. As much as I like having the drones recorded separately, there's a part of me that's like, maybe I should just go back to the garage for the
Yeah.
Highland pipe tracks on the next album.
Well, it does sound cool. It does sound really cool. I regret that we don't live closer. I have pallets moving through my possession constantly, and I made a pretty, if I do say so myself, a pretty decent stomp box for my daughter to dance on for a hard shoe practice at home.
Cool.
And
Yeah.
I think I could make one big enough, real quick and easy, that you could put a chair on it and tap your feet and get some real good sound out of it
Yeah.
someday.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny that this discussion is so long overdue. That like there's things that you have done to benefit the sound quality on Cold and Raw, where like you sent me that cool little rattle, the finger rattle or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Which figures on the last track of Cold and Raw, and it
Got one
really,
right
I think
here.
it adds a lot. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a helpful little thing. You slap those on your toes and tap away, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're a one-man band. It's
It
pretty
is
good.
funny, man. It was kind of blowing my mind to look at this album and realize, like, I mean, it came out in 2023, but it's like material from 2022, right?
Yeah.
And just thinking like, whoa, man, this is overdue. Yeah, it's been way too long. So I guess I'll wait until you have another album or two out before we talk about Cold and Raw.
Yeah. Yeah. The next one is what is it called? Humors of Toddy. And yeah, so I haven't even started putting sets together because I've been too busy playing Minecraft, but there's going to be some good stuff on there.
Oh, actually, and you know what? Like this is, yeah. I mean, well, I thought that I had a solid segue, and I don't. I was wrong.
No,
But we don't need them. We don't need them.
I'm sorry, man. Yeah.
When it comes to recording because you sang on this one too, a couple of tracks.
Yeah.
Was that also in the same room?
Yeah. Same room.
Same mic, everything, huh?
Same mic and everything. I can't remember if I ran that through a compressor or not. I generally don't. Like, generally, if I'm just singing for the podcast, I feel a little bit more entitled to like, I guess I can compress it. Because the whole, I don't know. I don't know how sound works. I just know that I've had a couple people say that they couldn't understand or they couldn't hear me talking well on the podcast when they were in their car. And I was like, oh, I should quality control listen in the car because listening on decent headphones even over Bluetooth I could hear everything fine. But like sure enough, like yeah, if I'm driving and I'm listening to the podcast before I started like running through some like I just compress it and limit it and then normalize it, and that seems to like get all of the mass of sound up high enough that you can hear it. But I always get like worried about how much that changes it for singing, like, and the singing's not great on here. It's supposed to just be celebrating, everybody should sing some songs and do that stuff. And so I wasn't worried, or like there were some things in the songs I was like, oh, that's not perfect, but I kind of was also thinking too much of the performance. So like, especially Herman of Killarney, like I'm on the wrong note sometimes, like a little bit sour or something, but I'm like, well, yeah, it's a hermit singing. Like the part where the hermit's singing, he's supposed to be like a drunken well, not drunken, but like a deranged old madman about to die, he should sound kind of overly pathetic, you know? So yeah, I don't think I tweaked it too much. I think it was just singing into the Zoom mic.
Well, for what it's worth, Jeremy, I think that's got to be a whole lot of, you know, the person who made the art having the keenest eye for flaws, because it's definitely top 3 for me on this album.
Kidding.
Like I like that track a lot, and it's funny how often I wake up with it in my head. Does this happen to you? Do you have do you get snatches of music as you wake up usually?
Oh my God, no.
I feel like when I was younger, I know that when I was younger, I over-romanticized this idea where I thought that like the universe was gifting me some great composition that was going to change the world, and if I could just hang in that liminal space between consciousness and unconsciousness, I'd get it, you know, and I'd be able to write it down as soon as I woke up. Yeah. I now realize that no, it's usually just whatever I was listening to the day before. But yeah, I usually have like something. It's almost like it's been on loop while I was asleep. So those first seconds when I wake up, it's there. And this song is there all the time for me.
Yeah, as I've been listening to it, so the reason, like, all these albums, they serve like several functions for me, but like one of them is after the first year of the podcast, like relaunch or whatever, I realized that I've played a crap ton of music and I don't remember any of it. So yes. like posting an album, it just became a resource of like I can quickly kind of click on that track to remember how it starts, because again, as we talked about in a section that may or may not have made it onto the episode, like not good at remembering titles of tunes, honestly not particularly good about remembering how tunes start, or how they are in the middle, but like if I can hear it, I can play it, but it's not, I don't have a great recall that way. But yeah, it's definitely happened. Like since the podcast is relaunched and all these albums have come out, I haven't really been in a position to do many gigs anyway, but the handful that I've done, I have regularly pulled up Bandcamp quick to like listen to it. So I remember how things started. And that's why I put the songs in there too, is again, prior to COVID, prior to family and PhD and stuff, I spent a lot of time singing around a fire. And I was like, oh man, this song, Hermit o' Killarney, like I've seen it in all of these 18th century tune books as just sheet music. And I wanted to see and when I found the lyrics, I was like, I just want to know this song. I want to be able to sing this song. So I'm going to put it on the album. And a couple, like all the songs have been that. They've always been, here are songs that I want to remember. So I will put them on the album to serve that same function. But I found that when I was re-listening to the album, I always skip those.
Oh, do you?
I kept skipping the singing parts. I was like, oh, I guess I'll leave it off. But I am putting a song on, because there's no songs on Cold and Raw, but there is going to be at least one on Humors of Toddy. So I guess I'm getting back to it.
For my part, I say that's good. You know, like I wouldn't have pressured you to, but you know, the fact that there wasn't on Cold and Raw, I'll admit there's a part of me that was kind of like, oh darn. Like I really like those parts of the podcast too. In fact, am I mixing things together in my memory, or have there been times when you've sang while walking outside on the podcast?
I mean, maybe. I don't know that I've like recorded a whole song while singing, but I have a tendency to sing I will sing when I'm walking, so I wouldn't be shocked to find out that I accidentally sang a narration of what I was doing.
Just like
I didn't realize
what's going on.
I didn't realize like how constant it was, but when I quit working at Grand Portage, I went back, and like it was such a cool space to work, where you kind of you'd have to walk to your work site, working for this National Park Service site that was beautiful setting next to Lake Superior, and this old reconstructed fort that just had great echoes and stuff. But I didn't realize until I left and came back that one of my like coworkers was like, oh, it's so nice you're here, like there's music again, because just every time I would walk into my workstation, I'd be singing or whistling or like literally playing a whistle or whatever, or sometimes piping if I was bringing my pipes in that day. And it just like the constant accompaniment of song.
That's lovely to be the music guy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've personally always felt like I'd rather have music playing than not at all times, no matter what I'm doing. So if you'd been my coworker, I definitely would have preferred to have you around.
Yeah. I think so one of the things to circle back to circle back. I regret saying that statement. But to revisit, that's not any better.
You
You're
go
talking about
ahead and tell
dreams.
me what you want to circle back to, and then I'll piggyback off of that. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, thinking about dreaming and tunes, the first time we were gonna record this was last summer.
Yeah.
Where any time I'm about to go see, it worked out. I was about to go see John Charles, and I felt guilty, like I was cheating on you or something. So like,
Yes.
we should do an interview.
We've got to keep things fair in the relationship. Yeah.
But I think you got sick or I got sick or something, and it didn't work out. But I listened back to all of our previous interviews to get ready for it, and I didn't do that for this. So I don't remember if I've told the story or not, but I definitely had this moment. I've had a couple of things happen where I've dreamt of something musical or linguistic, and it's felt super important. Like, oh yes, I'm being gifted a tune from the fairies or whatever. And I remember dreaming I was at this reenactment that I've gone to. That's sort of a weird space, but I was like running around the reenactment trying to find this piper, because I heard this highland piper playing a pibroch. And when I finally found him, he quit playing, and he looked at me like, yes, you've completed your quest, you have discovered me. And I was like,
this is so cinematic. I love
yeah.
this.
I was like, this tune, that's the Prince's Salute, isn't it? He's like, yes, and it's yours now. Amazing.
Wow.
And then I woke up and like remember, because I didn't know Prince's Salute. I knew it was a tune, but I'd never played it. I maybe had listened to it once or twice, but it wasn't like one of the pibrochs that I played. I was like, oh my God. So I woke up and got out my copy of Kingsbury, and I was like, okay, Prince's Salute. No, it was
Not
just
at all.
Sandrock-Beak. It was just the same pibroch that I've played since I was a 12-year-old and didn't know it was a pibroch, but was obsessed with it because Brother played it on their album. Right? It was like
Right. Yeah.
it was just about being drunk. It was not about Bonnie Prince Charlie or anything.
Oh man, cool dream though. I mean, I'm loving imagining the scenes of you like trying to get past people in amazing costumes, and you keep hearing it. You see him disappearing around the corner over and over again. There's a drone over there, that kind of thing.
Right. Follow the drone.
Well, this one though, what do you think it is, Jeremy? Is it just me? I mean, like there's part of me that realized, like, why does a do thou faithless world come into my mind so often? Does this say something about my general mood? Maybe that's why it's sticking with me. I don't know. But
I love it so much because it's so hypocritical, kind of like when so that guy was real, like it's a real person, right? Like it's the only, if you're watching it or listening to it on Bandcamp, it's the only album, or it's the only track with like track art, I think.
It is. That's right. I noticed that. Yeah, as you go through the tracks, they're all the album cover except that one, and I guess that's his hermitage.
That's his. That's his house. That's his hermit hut, and it was like a famous thing to go see. And it was just like, there's something about hermits that are so cliche, like it's so romantic, right? Like this notion of it, of like being a rich landlord's personal hermit. You know, that you can just go live on his property and he'll come out and give you port and you'll espouse some wisdom.
Right. Who hasn't dreamt of that life, right?
Right. But so often, like this guy in particular in Killarney, I can't remember the details exactly, but he's essentially a wealthy Englishman, so a colonizer of Ireland that was hunting and saw this cabin and really liked it and decided he didn't want to like live in the rat race anymore in England. So he just like built a hut and became a hermit of like constantly hunting and fishing for his pleasure.
Yes.
And it's like the only reason he can do that is because he's rich. So
right,
it's like, so then the notion of that guy going from this place of immense privilege in this colonized space, then further colonizing it for himself and like taking on this thing. And then the song of like, I thought like all the lyrics are so self-important and dramatic. And then the guy watching them is so, I shed a tear and I thought it was almost magical, like it didn't even happen, and then I watched him die. It's just so. As on Killarney's bank I stood near to her crystal wave, I saw a holy hermit retired within his cave. His eyes he often turned to heaven, and thus exclaimed he, Adieu, adieu, thou faithless world, thou wert not made for me. His bed was strewed with rushes, which grew along the shore, and o'er his limbs emaciate a sackcloth shirt he wore. His hoary beard and matted hair hung listless to his knee. Adieu, adieu, thou faithless world, thou wert not made for me. the whole myth of hermits was. I like the song for that. Like it's just such a nonsense song. Like any song that sounds one way but really means another thing, I'm really into. Like another one that I keep meaning to put on, like I thought about putting on Cold and Raw but didn't, is Mountain Streams of the Moorcock's Crow, which is this beautiful song that sounds all kinds of like magical and fantastical. And I started to sing it because I thought it was about fairies, and then realized like, no, it's not. It's not about fairies. It's actually just about a guy who meets a woman out in the bush, and they like hook up or whatever. And he's like, well, we should get married. And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. And he's like, oh, I get it. But next season, it's because you're family, right? But just, next season we'll do it. And I'll meet you here again. Yeah. And he meets her again, and like he doesn't even know her name. He's like, well, tell me your name and where your place is. And the chorus is, it's just like all these things. Like she keeps on not telling him who she is, or where she's from, and he just keeps on not taking the hint, basically. But it's this the song is so dramatic. But you're like, no, this is just a dude that hasn't realized he's been friend zoned, or that he's just a casual hookup and not the love of her life or whatever.
One of the most mundane, like, common interactions ever, but putting a mask of poetry over it.
Maybe not mundane, but
fair enough.
But it was, I kept feeling like I couldn't, I dare not put it on an album because Darla Henderson sings it really well on "Courting is a Pleasure."
I know that album. So, case in point, I don't remember songs. Like, I've listened to that album a lot, and it wasn't ringing any bells. So,
I was kind of bummed when he. I didn't realize when I saw him play in Iowa, he performed a song and he introduced the song saying, I got this tune from a traveler, Peter Bellamy, who's just a great musician. Anyway, so here's the Trois Brothers. I was like, damn, because I thought he was going to do Mountain Streams because that's where I got it. But Trois Brothers is also a stinking.
Oh, wait, is that the one where the one has the penknife and... Yeah. Oh, that one breaks my heart every time I listen.
It breaks your heart. Okay, again, it breaks your heart, but it's also like, it's the funny, like, oh crap, don't tell mom. You know, it's like, there's that aspect of it too.
And also, like, there's maybe room to also think, like, is he mostly worried about the shirt having blood on it? Like, she's gonna have to wash it. Is that what he's worried about having to tell their mom?
But I also, in my head canon, he's fine. Right, like
well, I prefer that.
It's fine. There's this funny. I don't know if there's no reason for you to have ever gotten into this stuff, but have you ever read Donald McBain's like treatise on historical, or not on historical, but on Scottish swordcraft or something?
I wish so badly that I could say it's right here on my shelf. I wish I could so much.
Like it's an incredible name, right? Donald McBain, but he's he was a mercenary and just he wrote a treatise on like how to fight with a Scottish basket hilt or Scottish broadsword or whatever, basket hilt anyway. But he keeps on getting in all these duels. Like he duels a bunch, right? As anybody who's going to be teaching people how to sword fight would probably wind up doing in the 18th century. But he gets in all these duels, he kills all these people, and he keeps on running into them later. Like, keeps on like
they're ghosts? Or?
Shoot, I stabbed him, and he's going to die. I better flee. And then he runs into them later, and they were like, oh, you didn't die. No, I didn't die. Well, let's have a drink together. So I assume that's how the Trois Brothers actually
ends. I could not be more delighted.
Yeah, I was willing to kill you. I was willing to fight you to the death. But when I did kill you, I was pretty bummed about it. And now that you're alive, we can be drinking buddies.
Well, that will make it easier for me to listen to that track because it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing both with all of these, and the secondary like joke meaning really is helpful. But like the Trois Brothers like is maybe the epitome of this for me, where I'm not entirely sure why I am so drawn to these songs. Yeah. They're so effective, you know.
It's because you've like lived, you know, like I think if you've got like a ton of family and have like traveled at all or cared about anybody, and like you've escorted a lot of people into the afterlife, so like there's a way that I was just so flippant about death and mourning and so many songs that I thought were funny in my youth that now just destroy me. And the idea that I
ever since you had a kid, enjoyable.
Right? Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Or a brother, you know, like
for sure.
I mean, I had a brother too, but I never. But I think that helps with the thinking that he's fine.
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
the times that I thought like, oh, I must have permanently maimed my brother. No, he's
Right.
fine. He's fine, and in fact, he is hitting me again now. Okay, shoot.
Yeah, we're gonna do this again. Yeah, young Benji, Boys of Bedlam isn't it? Does it's kind of the same thing for me, you know? It's like seems like a real sad story. Why do I keep listening to it on repeat? You know,
Yeah, that one's really good.
it's so good, right? And so I've been unsure. Like, is it because like I'm not so wrapped up in my navel gazing about it to think that like I'm uniquely weirdly macabre or something for liking these songs because they're popular. So obviously I'm not the only one. Like they've been around for a long time and there's a lot of songs like this, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that was such a fun. Yeah, young Benji. Wow. Uh, so that I mean, the song is sad, right? It's like
mhm.
it's also about like violence against women, which
Yeah.
is like a constant refrain. Like, there's so many. I don't know. There's sort of like a weird thing of like, do you ignore this music or do you talk about it explicitly
Mm-hmm.
to point out how common it was and is? Like, oh, how do you deal with that? But I also like that there's like a supernatural element to it. There's sort of like the saving
Yeah.
grace of it, right? Like that there's this tradition of well, like on the eve of her like wake, she'll come alive enough to tell us who killed her or
Dude,
whatever. Like that there's that communication between her brothers and her saying what to do to her
it's so
murderer.
effective in that song. When you get to that part, it's like the best creep out. It's so
With doors ajar and candlelight and torches burning clear, the streaked corpse till midnight they waked but nothing here. About the middle of the night the cocks began to craw, and at the dead hour of the night the corpse began to thraw. Oh, what has done thee wrong, sister, dead the deadly sin? Wha was sae stout and feared na doubt as through ye o'er the linn? Young Benji was the first man I laid my love upon. He was sae stout and broad-hearted, he threw me o'er the linn. Shall we young Benji's head, sister, shall we young Benji hang? Or shall we pick out his twa green and punish him merry gang? You munna Benji's head, brothers, you munna Benji hang, but you mun pick out his twa green and punish him merry gang. Tie a green cravat round his neck and lead him out and in, and the best a servant about your house to wait young Benji on. And I at every 7 years, and you'll take him to the linn, for that's the penance he mandry to scag his deadly sin. Like there's so much symbolism in that song that I have no idea what the hell it means. Like the tie a green cravat around his neck or cravat
good.
around his neck. Like what is that? That means something.
Yeah,
I don't know
surely.
what it means.
She was specific for a reason, right? There's got to be
Yeah,
something there.
but yeah, go send him the rest of his days blind to just think about what you did.
Yeah.
Just think about what you did. But yeah, that works so well. So that comes from Albin's Anthology, which is a really cool collection of songs from a guy named Campbell who taught Sir Walter Scott music. Like he
Oh,
was
really?
Sir Walter Scott's music tutor.
Big deal.
Yeah, and so like you kind of get these border ballads that Sir Walter Scott is going to be like obsessed with and kind of a part of for his reimagining of Highland culture for Rob Roy and the Waverley novels and all those kinds of things.
Mm.
But the other cool thing about that's the collection, Campbell's Albin's Anthology, but it has like seconds. So
Mm.
It was super nice to just be able to like, oh, I'm just going to play the harmonies. Oh, those harmonies are super effective.
Yeah.
Like they really sound good. And I really liked kind of exploring different instrument combos throughout the like breaks between the verses. And then it just went really well into Boys of Bedlam, which is a tune that I feel, again, because I've lived and known too many people at this point, that Boys of Bedlam, the song, is this weird like celebration, lampooning, exploitation of people with some pretty serious mental health challenges, and also people that were like completely oppressed by the system. So like that whole genre of music making fun of the insane in the 18th century, I don't feel comfortable with like singing, but the melody is so freaking good that I was like, I'm not gonna. I really thought it worked well as a set, but I didn't want to sing it. So it was like, well, here we go. We can just have the musical here. It'll be fine. Plus jaw harp then.
Yeah, that jaw harp is excellent there. But I hadn't even put that together. That now that you pointed out, I see it. But I guess when I read the title "Boys of Bedlam," I'd just kind of been thinking like rowdy boys.
Oh yeah, have you never heard the song? The song is really. So the song is there go my bonny boys, bonny mad boys, Bedlam boys are bonny. It's like Bedlam was the insane asylum I think in London, but like. They would charge people to go look at them, like go look at the lunatic. And you kind of see a tint of it in Sweeney Todd, where they're like going to Bedlam to buy hair from lunatics and that kind of thing. But the song itself is just, it's funny. It's just, this is funny that these people are in insane asylums. And like, if you've ever visited an asylum or like a mental health facility, like making fun of that stuff feels bad.
Yeah.
Like it just feels real icky. But the melody again is super cool. It's like, okay, we're gonna throw the melody in there anyway.
Man, I mean, you already ran through it, but like, what do we do with these things? When it's like so dark or so backward or so bad, but so cool at the same time. Like, heck, nabbit.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
like, I spend a lot of time with my students talking about that. Like Thomas Jefferson is my biggest, like, I don't know what to do with this guy. Cause like, he's brilliant. And the Declaration of Independence, which is like, it's written by committee, but it's largely Jefferson. Like that goes on to be the document that is used by pretty much every revolution afterwards. Certainly every
I remember you
revolution.
talking about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we've already talked.
Oh no,
about
in a podcast episode. I can't remember.
Oh yeah.
What did it wouldn't have been your Ojibwe language podcast, right? I've only listened to a couple episodes of that. It must have been something that came up for some reason.
Yeah, right. Because Andrew. Oh, so your discussion with Andrew Sullivan has already come out at this point. So where you almost had a Booget, you could almost do a Booget joke.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But I guess that wasn't on Ojibwe language podcast yet. But this season in Ojibwe language, learn how to say fart. That's what's coming.
Moose fart.
Yeah. I'm gonna put that. That's gonna be it. There you go. There's a reason to listen to season 2. There will be a
it's
reference
gonna be
to
in there somewhere. You gotta find it. Man, I think I lost a thread there, Jeremy. But
no, I can't believe it.
Yeah,
I was Andrew Sullivan.
Thomas Jefferson.
Language. Thomas Jefferson.
The Declaration of Independence is cool, but maybe Jefferson isn't. Right?
Yeah, Jefferson sucks a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just like all these things that like the tripping that we do as a society is like what leads us to today. So like there's sort of you can't hate it too bad because it's exactly what made us who we are. But like Jefferson is such a weird kettle of fish. I think I am repeating myself from something too often, but it's just frustrating because like, the Declaration of Independence is used by every revolution in the Atlantic world except for the United States ends slavery. Like part of the revolution is abolishing slavery. And like Jefferson is a pretty horrific slave owner, right? Like, and it's frustrating with Jefferson. Like when people like Jefferson or Voltaire have really bad takes, like really bad takes. Like Voltaire had a lot of anti-Semitic things to say.
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson has some horrific things to say about Native people and Black people. And like, it's hard to be like, oh, he's a product of his time, which is a nonsense argument anyway, but especially when you're talking about people that are defining the time. Like Jefferson is not a product of his time. Voltaire is not a product of their time. They are creating
the makers
time.
of their time.
Yeah. So like, I don't think you get a pass that way. Like, I don't think anybody gets a pass that way, but like, particularly if you are the intellectual that is like driving the force of how people think about the world, your bad take doesn't get to be excused the same way. I feel like, you know, I don't know.
It makes me think of that poetic wisdom from the, you know, as the what's that phrase? As the poet once said, the poet being AJR, can I truly love the art when I kind of hate the artist? Well put, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't spent enough time in like literary theory to get into the artist is dead thing. My stepdad is perpetually complaining about like I think as a culture, like millennials in particular, we're at that sweet spot of age for like the MCU to be for us, right?
Oh,
and so,
sure.
if you're like clued into the news or whatever, you couldn't watch an MCU movie and be surprised by anything because you knew like, oh, well, yeah, don't worry, the Black Panther isn't gone. He's coming back because they signed a 3-picture deal with Chadwick Boseman, so he's obviously going to be an Endgame or whatever, you know? And it was just like, what the hell? I'm just trying to watch this movie. Why are you talking about that stuff? Like, oh, yeah, fair enough. Sorry. Maybe perpetually online and reading stupid news reports about Hollywood is ruining this.
Mm-hmm. Though that sweet spot, being in that sweet spot does make me think of because my brain lives in The Simpsons all the time. There's a great scene where Lisa is sad at the kitchen table and Grandpa is sad at the kitchen table with her, and Lisa says, "It sucks being young. Nobody wants to listen to you." And Grandpa's like, "It sucks being old. No one wants to listen to you." And then Homer walks in the room. He's like, "I'm a 35-year-old white male. Everybody listens to all my ideas," as he's eating a can of nuts and gum.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
The whole world is for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting to be on the far side of that now. Like, I'm like, oh, young people today. But yeah, I love that every time you're like, well, I have all these Simpson references, but all your Simpson references are like first 15 seasons tops.
It's true.
Like,
yeah. First 12 is where they're mostly focused. Yeah, for sure.
I always expect like, oh, James is going to make a Simpsons reference. I don't know. Oh, no, that one I've seen.
Yeah, only the good ones.
Many times. Yeah. That was my sad college life was, I didn't have friends, like went away to college and was bad at making friends at first. And so I would go to sleep listening to the Simpsons DVDs with the commentary track on.
Oh,
so
very nice.
So it was like James Brooks and Matt Groening were like my friends. Like,
yeah, I love
chatting
that.
in the background.
Yeah.
I remember commentary tracks, speaking of old things.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I mean, extended edition Lord of the Rings with the commentaries, right? Was that not the funnest thing in the world?
I never did it.
Oh,
it was
someday.
This is an appropriate place to be talking about this. My in-laws are all like, I'm looking at a copy of the Silmarillion right now, and Lord of the Rings in my mother-in-law's office. Like, they're big Hobbit and Lord of the Rings people, and my family just wasn't at all. Like, didn't do that. And then my first exposure to it, I was finally in a really good Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And so like watching Fellowship of the Ring, I was just like, nah, it's not as good as playing it. Like I wasn't engaged.
They got all these ideas from Gygax anyway.
Right. And then, you know, as often happens, if you're a fool that moves around a bit and is bad at making friends, like I haven't played a game of D&D in a really long time. And so then revisiting Lord of the Rings after moving away from my gaming group was like, oh my God, I love this so much.
Yeah. Well, if you ever need some good commentary track, there's some good ones on them DVDs right there.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
I missed that.
Let me left turn you into another track. You did mention that jaw harp grooving on Boys of Bedlam there at the end of the last track. There is some killer jaw harp grooving on track 15, Jack the Sailor, She's the Girl That Can Do It. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning into this episode, and thanks again to Jeremy for coming back and doing a really long overdue, super fun marathon chat session. Super awesome. But also, I don't want to get in the way of this awesome track, so I'll just be real quick just to say thanks again for tuning in. Hope you're enjoying the chat. Be sure to check out this and the several other albums that Jeremy's put out. There will be links in the show notes. And going to give away a copy of Roly Poly to one supporter of the show. So thank you again to my good friends for supporting the show. And if you want to support the show, hop over to Patreon or send me any sort of cash, gold bullion, or unwanted bagpipes, and you'll be entered in future drawings as well. Let's see whom is selected by the Cthulhu Dice Tower this time. Number 3, that's going to be... That's going to be Jim. Thanks again, Jim. I'll reach out to you, and thank you again for supporting the show, and I hope everybody's having a great day. Goodbye.
These are two, I think these are also Watland tunes, right? Yeah, Jack the Sailor comes from John Watland, Celebrated Circus Tunes, and She's the Girl That Can Do It comes from Smollett Holden.
Mm.
But yeah, that is some good guitar harp stuff. Like,
it is. You got the sharp, twangy stuff going on in that one. I like that. I was curious.
Yeah, I think.
Do you ever?
I think it's my small one.
It must. It sounds like it must be a small one.
Yeah.
But you're wailing on it. It sounds really.
I've got a really teeny tiny. So jaw harps were like the harmonica of the fur trade. Like they were just like voyageurs. Everybody carried jaw harps. It seems like most native people carry jaw harps too, and it's one of my like biggest frustrations that there isn't a that wasn't a tradition that survived, like that we don't have Ojibwe jaw harp players to see what they did with it. Yeah. But they're just ubiquitous in the fur trade, and they're the little like Morjang ones, like they're teeny, they're just tiny little things. And so I've got a really tiny little brass Morjang that is like pitched someplace around F-ish, and I use it on a lot because it's got that high pitch, and if I put some putty on it to get it into something resembling a tune, like pitch, like in tune enough for whatever whistle I'm playing. But yeah, it's just they're lovely to have, and it was a pretty great moment reading through Patrick MacDonald's collection of Highland vocal airs when he mentions that St. Kilda, like the entire island, didn't have any instruments except for trumps, which is what they called jaw harps back then. I was like, well, there you go. And so I started playing jaw harps, and then I heard tell legendary stories of Ellen MacDonald, who's just like, Gaelic music piping wizard, who also just plays the hell out of a jaw harp. I was like, oh, okay, vindicated by God, vindicated. It was cool to see that like the tradition has survived in the. I guess he's not in the Hebrides technically. Like Ellen MacDonald's from that town that's only accessible by boat, I think, or a very long, miserable walk. But yeah, so any excuse to throw some jaw harp with whistle is a good time.
How many people do you think over the years though have read that and imagined all the St. Kildans just wandering around with trumpets? It's like everybody has a trumpet on this island.
Yeah, it was sort of funny. That was I've only managed to get 2 of my albums reviewed formally, and like the LBPS. So there's a review of Pay the Pipe Maker in the common stock, which I'm really grateful for. Like peer review is supposed to like point out your flaws and tell you what to fix, right? And it totally did.
That was when I started subscribing. Actually, and I barely made it in time to get a copy of that edition.
Oh, to LBPS?
Yeah.
Or to the common stock?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like the guy said like, oh, liner notes could use some polishing up. I was like, oh, okay. Note to self. And then he had some kind of commentary about how it was silly that I thought jaw harps were called trumps. I was like, well, that's what they were called in the 18th century, my guy. Like, it's not a big deal. But that was another one of those like vindicated by God, vindicated things where somebody posted on the thread about it like, hey, somebody complained about Jeremy saying these are trumps, but this is what they called them. Here's the source. It's like, yeah, I didn't make that.
Nice that you didn't have to be the one who said, here's the source. That's extra nice.
But yeah, it's funny, like all those terms, how you think like, probably they think it's something else. Anyway, go ahead, James.
Oh, no, that's totally good, because I was just going to say that I really like this track that has Miss Butt's favorite in the, just because I think it's funny.
I'm shocked that you were going to say something about Miss Butt's favorite. As I was looking over I was listening to your discussion with Ross about Pool
Oh yeah.
and how like you just listen to an album without really looking at the tracks.
Yes.
And I was telling myself like, because I've listened to Roly Poly now like probably half a dozen times in the last 72 hours, but I haven't looked at the tracks hardly at all.
Yeah.
And I was looking through the tracks. I'm like, Miss Butt's favorite. There's no way James isn't going to talk about Miss
Yeah,
Butt's
you knew. Yeah, I didn't know that was going to come up. Oh, and it's another one that's got some good jaw harp in it, so that's fine. I can segue to that just fine. It's not just because I thought Miss Butt's favorite sounds funny.
Yeah. No.
But I do think it sounds funny. Very immature. But that Take Care of My Cap, Mary Thought, Miss Butt's favorite. We got it it's like an uilleann solo track.
But yeah, so Miss Butt's favorite comes again from Straight and Scullern, so always good for a pretty stellar track. But yeah, Take Care of My Cap and the other ones come from John Murphy, who is this Irish piper living in Glasgow in the early 1800s, and maybe late 18th century, but his book comes out in the early 1800s, and it's wild. It's like the earliest setting I've seen for Gold Ring shows up in that collection.
Oh, yeah.
And there's some cool tunes, but yeah, that track is really great because I have a really good chanter. Although listening back to this, I can hear some things that I'm frustrated with my uilleann pipe chanter. But like, I have a really good uilleann pipe chanter, but it doesn't match my drones and regulators at all. And I've played enough sets that are all like one maker and well set up. I was like, oh, I'm actually not bad on regulators. And
you just have bad regulators.
Sort of like they're just not. Okay, I do have bad regulators, but like they're also just not matched well, right?
Yeah.
And because they're not matched well, and maybe because I've been told by one person I shouldn't have listened to too hard that like I would never be able to get them to work quite right. I've just accepted that they're not going to work.
Yeah.
And probably I should take them someplace else and get them tweaked or something. But like the guy who made them doesn't play regulators, and that might be a problem, right? Like
That's
if you don't if you don't use them, it's sort of hard to know what's important about it. So you're just copying existing ones, which is a path to success, like most of the time. But there's some slight things that are just like, no, that's
You'd
not
think some
quite going to
tweaking
work.
beyond that from experience would be important. Yeah.
But like, the reality is I'm just bad at maintenance and like taking care of reeds and building reeds and making everything balanced. But anyway, I have a Kohler Quinn chanter and different maker for regulators and drones, who's a dear friend, so I feel bad saying anything bad about the set. Like
yeah, of course.
it's like
Yeah.
but like but I realized, like, okay, I can play regulators pretty well if I have a chanter and regulators that are set up well. And so all of a sudden I felt fine to like record the regulator track separately. And so I did that with this track. But that also allowed me to like adjust the balance, like so the regulators aren't overpowering the chanter, which is what happens if I play them live. And I made sure, like, every time I've done that, for the most part, there's like one note that I'm hitting that's it would be impossible for me to hit while also playing, like, because you need to be using your right hand to do it.
Yeah.
Like you can have like your top hand on the uilleann chanter and your right hand or your bottom hand on the regulators playing stuff, but there's one note where I'm like hitting a chord that would be impossible to do. But otherwise, it's all like stuff that's doable and that I have played live, but just being able to record separately so I can adjust that sound level to the right spot is really nice. But,
I do think, like, I understand the attractiveness of like single take kind of stuff. Like, I mean, it can be convenient for you, the artist, of course. It's like less work afterward.
Oh my God. It's so much less work. Like the highland pipe tracks, the solo tracks on this album were such a joy.
Yeah. There, I'm done.
Joy. Yeah. Like I might take 20, I still might take 20 takes at it. Like some of the highland piping on here, it's like, oh man, I remember getting the best take on my chanter and then thinking, crap, my drone is just a little off, but I'm not gonna risk it, especially because there's a couple high B things on this album that don't really work out. And like the high B working with that reed and chanter combo was so rare.
You got to just go with that.
Like, okay, we're going we're doing it live or whatever.
Right. But aside, like, I don't think there needs to be any shame in a musician recording parts separately to put them together when that's what serves the tune best. So
yeah.
Even with your impossible regulator note snuck in there,
it's one. It's literally one. It's just like, just calm down, everybody. It's one note.
And it sounds real good.
In the scenario, there's a big outcry. Everybody listened to it, and everybody said, "There's not possible for him to hit that note." As opposed to
wait a second.
Yeah, nobody cares, noticed, or listened.
But aside from Miss Butt's favorite being obviously my favorite tune title on the album, it is fun to me that, like, you're absolutely right. Like, I listened to most of the music I listened to, but definitely this album, I listened and listened and listened without knowing what the tracks were called. And really, it was just in preparation to talk with you about it last summer that I went through and started reading the track names as I was listening to them to put stuff together. And there are two in particular that, for me, that enhanced the experience. And it's actually two that we mentioned toward the top of the episode. But I think I'll probably save playing them for now, because the two that I have in mind are the Black and the Gray.
Yeah.
Which had something to do with horse racing.
Yeah.
And
it sure does.
It's like, I enjoyed the tune anyway, but then once I knew that, I was like, it sounds like a horse race, like, really convincingly.
Thank you, James Moyer. Yeah, it's a horse race tune, right? Like, it's Cabaret also. Like, it's...
Right, which has been one of my favorites since I was a young teenager, thanks to the Wicked Tinkers. So there's also that going for it for me. Like, I just love that tune, for sure.
Yeah. It's like a funny thing, because like Cabaret, my first experience with Cabaret was some book about Scottish Highland regiments going to fight places, and there's some story about a Highland piper for a regiment in India who basically is killed, but he's not dead yet, and so he's propped up against a tree while he's like bleeding out, and he says, "Hey, give me my pipes," and he plays Cabaret, and that like inspires the regiment to charge into victory or whatever.
That's quite a story.
Yeah. It's a good story. I mean, it's evil. Like, it's right. One of those great examples.
We don't need to think any further than where just the impressive scene, and that's it. Let's not worry about what happened before or after.
Scene. I'm really hoping at some point, I don't know, I kind of I haven't taught world history in a couple of years now. And I really miss teaching world history, because it's so nice to bring in like a set of Highland bagpipes that are based on those like early 20th century or late 19th century sets that are just filled with everything from the empire. Like, well, here's African elephant ivory, and here's silver, and here's like African blackwood, like all these things that like, yeah, here are here are Scottish people being the front lines of the expanding British Empire, and the bagpipe becomes symbols of all of that. But anyway, but yeah, black and the gray. So in the Highlands, it's deer antlers, right? That's what caberfet means. It's about like the horns on a deer. And then, but yeah, in the borders, it's about a horse race. And I like looking at William Dixon's setting for it and kind of imagining it. I tried to play that tune like a descriptive piece of like in Irish music or in uilleann piping tunes, they have like these descriptive pieces where the tune is supposed to be telling a story, and you're supposed to like imagine the story as you go along. The most notorious or famous example of that is the fox chase. We can like hear the hounds going and the fox dying and everybody cheering.
Seamus Ennis did that one, didn't he?
Yeah, everybody does it. It's like
does everybody do it? I think I can remember him telling the story about it and then playing it kind of thing.
Yeah, but there's a couple really notorious ones. There's a couple battle descriptive pieces. There's one called The Hare and the Corn about like a rabbit bouncing around ruining your crop or whatever. But Fox Hunters is the one that everybody still does. Sorry to be dismissive, but yeah, Seamus Ennis definitely does it.
Yeah.
And I was like, black and the gray, like how do you take a William Dixon variation setting and make it feel like a descriptive piece? And I think it really works. Like I was playing through that tune, and when I was playing through it during the podcast, it was shortly after the Kentucky Derby.
I think I remember this episode actually.
Yeah. And I like watched the Kentucky Derby and tried to match the tempo to like watching the race a little bit. And it was just like the dramatic finish, like the second to last part or whatever is like this dramatic finish kind of sound. And the thing I'm most proud about is getting I think it's the high A on that John Swain lowland chanter in A. Like it just absolutely sounds like a horse neighing to me. Like you can really make it sound like a
right.
You make it sound like a horse. But yeah, I'm really proud of that track. I was proposing to give a workshop at Piper's Gathering about how to play border tunes as descriptive pieces, like to rethink Dixon variation sets as like what more could they do for us, and like I guess I'm relieved that they didn't ask me to do it because the only example I had was Black and the Gray, but I was really excited to like look through the rest of the Dixon manuscript and find another tune that could like you could tell a story with the variations rather than just think of them as like exercises or as like flexes, which is I think often how Dixon's stuff or all those variation sets are sort of treated, is that like, oh, this is just a show of your excellence and your precision.
Right.
Black and the Gray particular works better if you don't monotone it, if you don't just like, if you don't play a tune explicitly on the beat with a metronome going, but you let it speed up, slow down, take one variation really slow, speed one the hell up to tell a different story. I think that's valid and musical. And it's also like and I'm proud of that track because like in the reviews that Paul Martin and Ian Gelston wrote, they both pointed that track out of like, and those guys are like really well versed in the tradition of like the borders and Northumberland, so that they were like, yeah, his Highland piping's pretty cool, but you should really check out Black and Gray. It's like a really cool version of it. It's like, yes, people from where this tune is from didn't think it sucked. This feels like a great accomplishment.
Big win, yeah. remember talking to Owen Kennedy, the fiddler. He was talking about how some of the Shetland music that he played, and I think he was saying that this comes from the Nordic fiddling tradition of having descriptive tunes in a similar way that they tell stories. And he had one on his album that was like a fisherman going out to sea and then a storm coming along. It's like the first part is he's getting ready and going, and then the second part is like the storm building up, and then the third part is him sinking under the waves, and then the final part is him ascending into heaven or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that like Pibroch has on offer in. I mean, Shetland's part of Scotland, but like the descriptive pieces are so much more an Irish thing. Or we think of it so much of an Irish thing, just because of Fox Hunt. But yeah, like all of these tunes that carry stories, but Pibroch, like that's the thing that really like broke my heart and inspired me about Pibroch, was hearing the like breakdown explanation of all of the variations of Lament of the Children.
Yeah.
And that wrecked me before I had a kid.
You didn't even have one yet.
I didn't even have a kid, and it wrecked me. And like every time I wrote a Pibroch, I thought about that. Of like, okay, well, what is this variation telling? Like, what story is this a part of? You know. But yeah.
I have this
It's cool.
aspiration to someday learn to play Pibroch first, and then to write at least one, maybe some, for local events here in Utah. Just because I think it'd be cool. I think it would be
so wild that you've never dabbled. You've never dabbled, and you've never been Pibroch curious.
I mean, I've been Pibroch curious, but it's gone no further than my head. You know, it hasn't made it to my fingers yet, is the thing.
So I'm surprised, because you listened to Brother growing up.
Oh, for
right?
sure,
like,
yeah. Love Brother.
So did you not play Androch Big? Like, was that not on your fingers all the time? Or no?
I did, like, I wouldn't say I played it like all the way through the way they do on the album or anything like that, but definitely I attempted to mimic it multiple times in high school, for sure. That and several others my friends and I would toss around. Oh, for sure, yeah.
Like, I mean, that's it. I distinctly remember, and I'm sure we've talked about on. I'd be shocked if we haven't talked about this on your show before, but like I remember the one time I was in a pretty serious band playing Androch Big, and somebody coming over saying, "You're playing Pibroch," and I was just so indignant. Like, no, Pibroch's boring. This is this amazing rock and roll band from Australia called Brother. Ever heard of them? And yeah, no, they were playing Pibroch, you know, and it's a really badass, it's a really excellent Pibroch, right? Like, it works musically. And I, as a snarky teenager, I loved it too, because you could play it and people would think you were playing Amazing Grace if you really played out that opening A to D and then drop down to C. But it's such a musical tune. But anyway, the thought I was having was that, like, really, I'm crap at remembering names of tunes, especially short tunes, and so it feels like the only way to really commit a tune to memory is for there to be an elaborate story about it.
Oh yeah,
and for it to be a Pibroch. And like once I realized, when somebody pointed out to me like the pattern of most Pibrochs, which is absurdly easy, right? If like the first time you play the track, it's part A, part B, and then the second line it's part A, part B, part B, and the third line is part A, part B. It's like, wait a minute, you're telling me that's all I have to write? It's like some kind of a feeling for A and a B that responds to it, and then just double those things up, and you know, like
it's like a haiku. This is so
easy.
Yeah,
it's sort of easy, and I think it's sort of
to all the haiku artists out there who are now yelling at the radio. I didn't really mean that it's easy, obviously.
Yeah, the radio, yeah, screaming at their phones. But yeah, like I just felt like there was no chance that I could write a reel or a hornpipe as good as all of the ones that I was trying desperately to learn as a youth. And so why not, write a Pibroch about it? Which is silly, right? Because Pibrochs are super hard too, and like there's way more than we know of. But it, I haven't run into a thing. Every time I've sat down to read a Pibroch, I haven't run into the same thing that has happened, like with the first track we talked about, St. Mary's Hornpipe or Robin's Roly-Poly, right? Where it's like, oh, it turns out that's somebody else's tune. Like, all the pibrochs I've written have been mine. Like, I haven't encountered did a whoopsie there. Yeah. And it's easy to do that because, like, it's like there's stories built into it, right? Like, there's things. Like, the first real pibroch I wrote about my grandparents, John and Mary Blair Salute, which I might put that in Humors of Toddy, but it's like there's this part in there in that tune that doesn't really work. It's like slightly broken to reflect this period in their lives where they were separated from one another, like they were long distance because my granddad went off to get a job to make money so they could afford to get married. And like when my grandma died and we were going through her vault or her safe or whatever, we found the love letters that my grandpa wrote to her that she kept like her entire life. And he died like 10 years before she did. So it's just like, it was just this amazing experience. God, we definitely talked about this because we inserted it in our episode, The very first time we talked, you read some of the love letters with the pibroch playing in the background, But I don't have that pibroch in... I haven't recorded it for an album yet, right?
No, I think that the recording you used was from when you went to Scotland and you'd recorded it like on the beach or something.
Yeah.
And so in fact, I think I can remember you saying that it's not actually like, it didn't come out quite right or something like that, but it was like, there was enough of it.
Yeah.
To...
So on Oyster Wives Rant, there's like an improvisation that I did in St. Clement's Church in the Isle of Harris. But
is that what we used maybe?
Yeah. But it's this tune. Like, no, we definitely used it because I remember sending it to my mom. I was like, hey, check this thing out. Anyway, sorry. Goodness gracious. I mean, we've joked. I remember this from last time I was getting ready for this interview last year. I mean, it's January, so that's...
I mean, technically.
but I remember... anyway, I remember that we definitely talked about this. Anyway... it was just easy. It was easy to it's easy to write a tune that is really meaningful and powerful. It was easy for me anyway, easier for me to write a pibroch than like a jig or a reel. So that's just impossible to me. Every time I write a reel or a jig, I assume that somebody else is already, to the point where I try desperately to get somebody to tell me what it is.
Right. And then accidentally end up sending it directly to the person who wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. God, thank God he's nice. It could have been just the worst. Can you imagine that review? Like, well, Jeremy Kingsbury's Cold and Raw begins with Roly-Poly begins with my tune, which he claims he wrote himself. What a monster. This is what academia would be like. That would be absolutely destroyed in an academic press, but
yeah, luckily Ian's cool. Thanks for being cool, man.
So cool. Like,
no, but the other one that the other track on this album that knowing the title, and I guess part of it is the story too. And actually, I can't remember now, Jeremy. It's the Morning Post. But did you have it? Did I read it in the liner notes, or did you mention it in the episode, or did you bring this up to John Charles and I at some point? Am I making this up? Isn't the post have something to do with a postman who's riding his bicycle and the bike tipped over?
You are conflating things. So John Charles just at the time that this episode is being recorded, John Charles just posted a tune. Whoops, sorry, I dropped my phone. John Charles just posted a tune about the postman that you used.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So you're right. I put the two things together.
Not. I have nothing to do with it.
Hang on a sec, though. Imagine that story and put the Morning Post as the background music. It's an alternative, is all I'm saying. It could also work for the story.
Yeah. Kind of bunch. Maybe so.
That's funny.
Yeah, I got nothing from Morning Post. We already talked about it, too, I think, because it was...
we brought it up at the beginning of the episode. Jeremy,
this is the worst episode of Droning On. I'm so sorry.
How deep into that bottle of whiskey are we at this point?
Dude, I'm drinking Old Pulteney.
Is it affecting me more than it's affecting you?
No, it's affecting me. I mean, it doesn't help that this episode began with you kindly saying an hour earlier than we were supposed to meet, hey, I can meet, and me being already at that point an hour and a half into trying to get my son to sleep. And like, I gather because you have a herd of children rather than a singular, that you probably never did the co-sleeping thing. Like, you're probably responsible
Jeremy,
parents that
nope.
like...
We are still co-sleeping. Don't even start thinking that I know what I'm doing. My wife and I had 2 and at one point 3 children between us last night.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Earlier this week, my 9-year-old, I carried my 9-year-old out of our bed at one point. My wife woke me up because this is our routine, right? 3 or 4 times a night, she'll wake me up and say, so-and-so is asleep again. Will you take them back to their bed, you know? And I take them to their bed. And so she woke me up and I was still groggy, you know, I walk around the bed thinking I'm picking up my 4-year-old. Yeah. And it's my 9-year-old. I'm like, what happened? Oh, it's my other kid. Yeah. And I picked up my 9-year-old. I was like, wow. Oh, your bedroom's downstairs now, isn't it, buddy? Do you want to sleep on the couch? You know?
Well, yeah. So ever since we weaned Robin, I have put him to bed. And like, I did not realize what a mental, like, so the whole, like, up until he was 2, and he was still nursing, like when Laurel and Robin would go to bed, I would go into the basement and work. Like, that was my work time.
Yeah, some quiet time for you, yeah.
As soon as they went to bed, I would start working, and I would generally work for hours and hours. But like, but now since he's weaned, I've been putting him to bed, and it is so hard to get back out of bed. Like, once you've done the various mental gymnastics to be like, oh, what creature's going to help you sleep tonight?
Right.
Oh, is that Elmo I see? Where's Elmo? Right there. Oh, okay, let's get Elmo. And I'll reach up and I'll grab Elmo and I'll rub it into his chest like, oh, your Elmo's here to sleep. And he'll start doing a game. We're like, no, you can't do something wild. Elmo will leave your chest if you do something wild. And all that, like, we are going to bed.
It's more effective on you than on the kid, isn't
it? Yeah. Just like completely, I'm done. Like, it's impossible to get out of bed after you've gone through that routine. Yeah. So my brain is completely shut off. So as an apology to the listener for how unhinged this episode has been, it's because my brain has basically been asleep. And in order to stay awake, I've been drinking whiskey, which is not helpful.
And in the meantime, I'm also barely making it in terms of lack of sleep, and I don't even and I've got nothing but water, and that's also not helpful.
It doesn't work. Not a good stimulant.
Neither of these things are working.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it makes you feel any better, yeah, I'm right there with you, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's good to know. I mean, it's weird. I can't imagine. Like, I'm already nostalgic for the times when he has his own bed and wants to come sleep with us, because I'm selfish. Like, we only have one kid, right? So it's like every milestone, and like 99% sure we're only going to have one kid. So it's like, oh, this is the last time this is happening, or whatever.
Yeah, that's extra
the idea
heavy.
Of him getting his own bed feels kind of sad to me, rather than like a celebration moment. So I'm like already nostalgic for when he has a nightmare when he's like 5 and wants to jump back in our bed, even though he hasn't slept anywhere but our bed.
Yeah, you're already hoping you'll come back.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. I wish all my kids could just stop growing, for sure. And Jeremy, you never have to say that you only have one. I think kids are just like lizards and snakes. And here's what I mean by that. Wait a sec. What I mean is, a lot of lizards and snakes that you keep domesticated, if they're in a small cage, they grow to match the size of the tank that they live in, is what I'm saying.
That's really good.
And so I mean, like, emotionally, in terms of like how much bandwidth it takes to have kids, however many you have, they will expand to take up the maximum amount of your bandwidth. And so you never have to say you only have one.
Is that a James Moyer original, or is that like, that's really good?
It might be, but it might also be as original as Ian Gelston's tune. It might have been Ian Gelston who said that, actually. I'm not
Probably Ian Gelston said it. It's really good. It's really good. I really like that.
Well, I had a lot of pet snakes when I was a kid, so. Oh, we need another tune though, Jeremy. We can't peter out yet.
Well, do you have any ideas? Because I have one that I want to hear.
I do, and I still want to hear that one, but I do also, in case it's not this one, I want to sneak in track 2, which I think Old Rusty Gun is the one that I got like especially excited about, but it might be Tail Toddle. I don't know. The whole set.
No, it's Old Rusty Gun.
Yeah.
If it's not Old Rusty Gun, you're not a piper. I think
Old Rusty Gun, man. That's right at the end of it.
So
yeah,
good.
that was it for sure. Yeah. Oh, though Tail Toddle does stand out to me because like it's a fun trip down memory lane when I realized what tune that was. I think it's the same tune. Is that a Dixon tune, Tail Toddle?
It might be. It's like in everywhere. It's not though. This is a Donald McDonald setting.
Oh yeah. Well, the title made me think of this guy. Are you friends with John Lou Larry? Lou Larry?
Yeah. Or maybe
Lou Larry? I've never met him before, but he's got a track on SoundCloud that I have in my favorites because I've listened to it so many times. It's so good. And he called it "Lasses Make Your Tails Toddle."
Oh yeah, that's same too, I'm sure.
I think it is. And I was just looking back earlier today to see, and yeah, my first comment on his SoundCloud track was 5 years ago. Just saying like, where did this tune come from? This is an amazing tune. I love this tune so much. So that's why I had it mixed up with Rusty Old Gun. Both great tunes. But yeah, Rusty Old Gun, man, you killed it with Rusty Old Gun in the set.
Old Rusty Gun is such a good tune. The benefit of this discussion coming years after these tunes kind of came and left, that it's cool to see like what has survived, like what is still like top of my playlist, right? Like Old Rusty Gun is just it. Like that is hands down my favorite tune. Like it's so good. And because we the last time we talked, James, it was on the eve of me traveling across country to North Carolina, but I knew I was going to stop and meet John Charles in person for the second time because I already returned his border pipes to him. But it was like going to be a longer visit. And the whole time I definitely did the bad practice of driving while piping, of like, drive with your knees and play the practice chanter while you drive. Yep. And that track, and Old Rusty Gun in particular, I played that tune across America, man. Like it was like I came up with every possible variation of how to make that tune, how to just like continue to explore that tune, because it's just a 2-part tune in Donald McDonald, but like I think I have three runs at it of like doing slightly different variations every time because it's so good. It's so good. And like it was one of these cool moments where at Piper's Gathering last year, I was running around because I think most people at Piper's Gathering play like 1 or 2 bagpipes that are represented there. I make the mistake of all of them. I play every bagpipe that's represented there, so like I'm always bouncing between small pipes and uilleann pipes and border pipes or Northumbrian pipes or whatever. And so I popped back into the session, and I just remember playing when I finally got a chance to play a tune with like some of the like small pipers or whatever. I played Old Rusty Gun next to one of the instructors, and it was cool. Like both times I've gone to Piper's Gathering, I've played a tune that I really liked in front of one of the instructors, and they looked at me like, "What the what the hell is that? Like,
Yeah.
what is that tune? That's amazing.
You got your chance to pull out the big guns in front of the right person. Yeah.
But it's so good. Old Rusty Gun is such a good tune, and like it really lends itself to all those different like ways of playing it. Of like adding the like, what if they're all triplets? Like, let's just do all triplets.
Yeah.
Like, whoops, all triplets, or whoops, all Durees. Yeah, it's such a good tune. It's so good. I don't understand like so much. Like I never know on the podcast. I play through so much music from the 18th and 19th century. And I don't pay attention really to what's happening in the competition scene.
Yeah.
I kind of have a sense of like, well, I think this tune's still around. Or I vaguely remember hearing this. But like Old Rusty Gun, I haven't heard. And I have no idea how that tune hasn't maintained its status as like what it should be, which is the greatest tune on bagpipes ever. Like, how is not everybody wanting to play it?
Like,
I think so.
It would fit in so well on the current competition and performance, like mainstream bagpiping, highland bagpiping area. Like, I think it would fit right in.
Yeah, I feel like nowadays people are coming back to the idea of like putting some pibroch. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they are, right? Like for the last 20 years, it's been like, well, maybe we should put pibroch embellishments in light music.
Yeah,
because it sounds badass, and it's what they were doing before we got weird about this. And like. But yeah, Old Rusty Gun is just such a good tune. I just don't understand how it isn't on every album, ever. like why isn't everybody like have their own version of this or love it? So I guess that's it. I know, I think my audience on Way Too Twog's podcast of bagpipe history, is that what it is?
Way Too Twog's bagpipe and history podcast.
There you go. Way Too Twog's bagpipe and history podcast.
Hold on, your name's Jeremy Kingsbury.
Get the one, yeah. I'm confused because it was Way Too Twog's podcast of bagpipe power, and then we changed it to bagpipe and history podcast. But I think my audience is more niche than yours, so I will say this to all of the Droning On listeners. First off, you've done an excellent job. This is a great podcast to listen to. Secondly, what the hell are you doing not playing Old Rusty Gun? This tune is amazing.
Hey, and actually, along those lines, plug for the work you put into the tune books for the albums. I hope it doesn't make me seem like a bad student in any way, that this is the one that I scrolled straight to in this tune book. Like, it's fun. And I did click on some of the links to some of your sources too, because I like flipping through old books just because I think it's fun to look at. But this is the one that like, I was like, where word search, like Command F Rusty, like take me straight there, and because killer tune. And so anybody listening who's like, hey, I want to learn that tune, guess where you can find the music? Professor Way Too Twag has put together a really handy resource.
Yeah, I feel bad. I feel like I have let down my Patreon subscribers by playing Minecraft rather than putting the tune book together for season 8. But like,
nah, it'll get there.
It'll happen at some point. But yeah, the tune book.
And you know what else, Jeremy? It'll happen, and 2 years later, you and I are going to talk about it.
Yeah, 2, maybe 3. Gosh, I forgot to say, I'm so proud of you for taking a break. I'm just
That's
so
kind of you. Thanks.
I'm proud of you for taking a break, and I'm proud of you for coming back.
Thanks,
man. No, never mind.
I
shame you for coming back.
Keep it. Yeah, I'll take it.
Like, it's just like when I decided to take January off for the first time and like stuck to it. It's hard. It's so hard not to put out an episode after you've been doing it for a year. It is. There's something visceral in you that's like, I know that in order to build a podcast, you need to put out an episode every single week or every other week, but you have to be consistent. And like the first time you don't do that, it hurts. Like it hurts. So I'm proud of you for being like, something's got to give. I need to take a break for this to survive. And I'm so relieved that it came back. Like
thanks.
Yeah, I'm on record. I'm on record as saying Droning On is my favorite piping podcast, and that is still very much the case. So I'm delighted that it's back. But I'm just super proud of you for being able to be like, I've assessed the situation, and what is needed here is a break.
Well, it's really kind of you. I do really appreciate it. Yeah, because I wish I could say that I was like like having clear thoughts and making a wise decision. I think mostly I was just driven to desperation. yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
something
I
had to
hear
give,
that.
but oh well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still, my plan is to go to one a month in theory next
Hmm.
year, but I don't know that I can. Like, that
Isn't
drive,
isn't
it's
that
hard.
what fire draw near? I'm so far behind with fire draw near that I can just listen whenever I want, and so I've never had to worry about the frequency of releases. But isn't that a monthly?
It's once a month.
It
Yeah,
strikes me as similar in that it's like heavily researched and there's lots of different, concordances and stuff. Like it strikes me as a similar show format to what you're doing,
yeah.
and so there's
Yeah,
precedent
he's
for it,
once a month, and like he's once a month, and his shows every episode is a banger.
Oh, for
I
sure,
feel
yeah.
weird. I've realized that like I don't listen. I don't listen to podcasts. Like I don't listen to piping podcasts or music podcasts except for yours. And occasionally I realize that
And
every
I
time I
listen to
check
yours,
into,
Jeremy.
well, of course, obviously
Yeah.
everybody listens to mine. You have to. No, but like I realized that the episodes that I'm drawn to with Fire Draw Near are the Patreon episodes that he releases. I really like that model too. Of like, I don't know. I don't know how he does his business because like
Hmm.
Fire Draw Near is what I wanted my podcast to be, but I was too scared of legal action for not getting permission to
Yeah.
to post all those clips.
Hmm.
And like that's why I so love when John Charles does an episode because he does all the legwork of getting
Yeah.
permissions to post all those things.
Yeah. He's very
So
thorough about
like
that. Very
yeah,
respectable.
like every very demure as the kids say
You're right.
a month
Yeah.
ago on TikTok or whatever.
As the kids were
Um,
saying, yeah.
yeah, but like that's why I'm so thankful when he does an episode because it's like what I kind of imagined the podcast was gonna be.
Hmm.
But I tried to get permissions from Toblerone Dukas for a track once, and it took forever to get
Hmm.
back. It was like, oh, I can't do this
Yeah.
anything resembling often enough. So I think Fire Draw Near just doesn't give a shit, like doesn't give a hoot.
Yeah. I get the feeling
Just
that
like
he's just going for it.
he's just an anarchist about it. But I
Right.
think he's also on the radio once a month. So I don't know.
Mm.
I'm excited about the prospect of doing once a month episodes of like what if every episode was one of the deep researched ones
Mm.
rather than just one of the like here's the tunes I'm thinking of today. But I'm
Mhm.
also but I don't know. I don't know. I just have a lot going on this year, so I kind of need to go to once a month. But I feel like almost doing once a month will be more pressure than doing once every other week.
Because then you'll feel like it has to be really good because
Yeah,
it's the
better be
only one
good.
this month. Yeah, I see
Yeah.
what you mean.
I don't know.
Well, like you said, you couldn't have trusted me to do an album review. So like I'm not gonna be I'm maybe not the guy. It maybe doesn't carry a lot of weight for me to say this, but as a listener, I've enjoyed every episode you've ever done. So I think you're gonna be pretty safe with whatever you put out is still gonna be a banger.
Yeah, I wish I drank less whiskey before this discussion. This would be good.
Now, hang on a sec, Jeremy. What tune did you want to do? It wasn't.
I wanted to revisit John Daly and Mrs. Evelyn Shears, which is
Yeah.
track 9.
Hmm.
I don't know. I just wanted to call out. There's a couple of people that I really love that are represented on this track.
Oh yeah.
One of them is John Daly, and the other one is Barry Shears, because Barry Shears wrote both of these tunes.
Oh.
And they're just super good. Like they're really good tunes, and like Barry Shears is the first person to put Brenda Stubbert's reel into like bagpipe medium,
Mm.
and like I think Brenda Stubbert's is just as much as it's a fiddle tune written by Brenda Stubbert's, it's like we think of it as a bagpipe tune, and the bagpipe tune form of it comes from Barry Shears. But anyway, Barry wrote both these tunes, and Miss Evelyn Shears is one that I feel like I've heard 100 places, but it was cool to see his setting of it. And the opening tune of that track, John Daly, like just so many of my, the way I think about and the context I've made via bagpiping wouldn't be possible without John Daly, that it feels cool to like play the tune named for him that Barry wrote, who's like, that's an introduction I wouldn't have had without John anyway. But it's a good tune. And I played this on G border pipes, and I played it down a note, so I played it as written on G border pipes, which is not, so that means kind of transposing the note down. It makes a really cool sound. And then also, because of those John Swain pipes working as well as they do, let me kind of bring the drone in later. So there's like just the bass drone going, and then I add in the tenor drone. I think is how it goes.
Oh, is that using the cheek trick?
It was just actually just turning it off.
Oh, I see.
Just letting it kind of be well enough set up that I could slightly change the pressure and the drone would come back in.
Well, that feels like really nice, and so maybe that's our finisher. We go into.
I feel bad. I'm so drunk now.
I already think that the appropriate thing to do with this episode, Jeremy, is not edit it at all. And put the whole thing out and see what happens.